Started right at 10. I think some others will be joining us, but I'm also recording so people can catch up. As I mentioned, you all are muted right now. We can unmute you when we get kind of to the end, but I didn't want to have a lot of background noise. You can also use the chat box if you have a question at any point during kind of the presentation part. So I'm going to be talking today about how we can support your campus with civic action planning this year. There are a number of opportunities through National Campus Compact and through Iowa Campus Compact. And so I'm going to walk through some of the possibilities for the year. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. And I'm also always willing to have individual conversations about what might work best for your campus. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as I have a few PowerPoint slides for us to go through today. Just a second. Okay. So again, just a little bit of background on why Campus Compact chose to do an action statement right now, and this was in the spring of last year. So the spring of this past year was the 30th anniversary of Campus Compact nationally, so part of the effort was to mark that 30th anniversary. But also it's in recognition of just how much infrastructure has been built up on campuses in that 30 years. There really is a lot of great work happening across the state, here in Iowa with our 22 member institutions, and nationally with the nearly 1,200 members and 34 state offices that we now have. This is a way to help us grow in our ability to show evidence of the impact that community engagement efforts are having. And also a recognition of the fact that we have to continue to do more, to have a greater impact on students, to have a greater impact on communities, and to really hone in on where we can focus and where we can make the most difference. And as you'll see, the action statement's also an articulation of really the core values that brought all of our member institutions together in the first place and that have continued to grow our organization in the last 30 years. So here in Iowa, the action statement was signed by all of our member presidents. So that's all 22 of our member presidents signed on to the action statement last year. And just to review what that action statement really says, these are the 5 core commitments that are in the action statement. And as you can see, those are really about building mutually respectful partnerships with communities beyond the campus, preparing students to be engaged citizens, really being place-based institutions, contributing to the health of local communities and beyond, and then really bringing the capacity of institutions in a lot of areas, research, teaching, partnerships, institutional practices, really looking at social and economic inequalities and how we can make a difference. And then through all that, fostering an environment where we're really making the public purpose of higher education our central focus. And that means setting high expectations for everyone on our campuses to contribute towards this. The other thing to know is that at the end of the action statement commits each president to developing a campus civic action plan within a year. March 20th was our goal date for member presidents to sign. Most of ours did sign before that date, some were slightly after, but about that time. So in the spring of 2017, we're going to be looking for ways to share and promote those civic action plans for all of our member presidents who signed on. So that's the reason we're really looking to support these efforts this year to help all of our member campuses reach the goal of creating an action plan that can be shared in the spring. Again, some of the presidents who signed on expressed concern about not wanting to create new plans when plans were already in place. So I just first want to reiterate that that is not the goal. We're not looking to reinvent wheels or duplicate efforts. If your campus already has a strong plan, this might simply be a platform for you to share it. But if there is a way we can support just sort of more thought out and planned efforts and help you to really grow what you're doing, we want to do that this year, and the resources around the Civic Action Plan can be a way to do that. So to help introduce the concept, I'm going to share a quick video from our national president, Andrew Seligson, just talking from his perspective with National Campus Compact about the importance of the action statement and the subsequent planning.
Hi, I'm Andrew Seligson, president of Campus Compact, and I just wanted to say a few words about the civic action planning process that you are getting ready to undertake. And I thought I'd start by saying a little bit about where this initiative comes from. And it's tied up with the fact that last year was Campus Compact's 30th anniversary. And on that occasion, our leadership, our national board.
Oops.
Hi,
Sorry,
I'm
guys.
Andrew Seligson. To get better and better at being effective agents of democratic change. So when we look back and thought about where we've come, the first thing we noted was we have done a lot. We, Campus Compact, we, our member institutions, other organizations, public officials, the federal government have all contributed to developing an enormous and strong infrastructure for supporting higher education community engagement and the public purposes of higher education. That infrastructure looks like centers and institutes on our campus. It looks like faculty development programs through Campus Compact, other organizations, member institutions. It looks like programs supporting community-based research. It looks like the journals we have across our field to share the best knowledge about the work we're doing. It's an enormous and impressive change, and for 30 years worth of work, it's an incredible outcome. At the same time, when we think about that same 30-year period, the challenges that we were created to address, those challenges have grown. Our society has become more polarized, both politically and in other ways. The inequality that was always a feature of our landscape has exploded in the last 30 years, deepening divides along all sorts of divides. And so we are facing real challenges. The good news is we have this enormous infrastructure for engagement so that higher education can do our part. So as we thought forward based on that analysis, we thought what we need to do is figure out how to ensure that the infrastructure we have built is deployed for maximum impact for students to create democratic, engaged citizens, and impact for communities to help create the conditions for opportunity and equity and justice across our country. The Civic Action Planning Initiative grew out of that thinking. We thought it made sense to ask our member institutions, their presidents and chancellors to recommit to the values undergirding higher education community engagement, and also to have a practical outcome of that commitment in the form of a public plan that says this is how we are going to realize those values in practice, how we are going to work with our communities to make positive change, to produce the more democratic, the more just, the more equitable and sustainable society that all of us want. So that's how we got to where we are. More than 400 institutions, as I record this, have signed on and made this commitment, and we are now collectively undertaking the work of building the campus civic action plans that will make that change possible. I just want to say a few things about the nature of the planning work and the opportunities I think it creates for our campuses and our communities. The first thing I'd say about that work is to build a campus civic action plan will require many and diverse voices. And that's true in a variety of senses. So on the one hand, we will need our students to be at the table. We will need faculty and staff to be at the table. We will need senior leaders to be at the table. We will also need members of the campus community who are not always involved in the community engagement conversation to be at the table. People who direct purchasing for the campus and have the opportunity to have tremendous impact on creating economic opportunity for small businesses. People who develop real estate for the campus and have a tremendous impact on communities adjacent to the campus as campuses grow. People who are involved in admissions and financial aid and played a crucial role in creating pathways to opportunity for members of historically underserved communities. All of these folks should be at the table in this conversation about a civic action plan. So, of course, should members of communities beyond the campus to whom the campus is connected, community residents, leaders of significant organizations, public officials. All of these people have a place at the table as the campus thinks about how it will engage as a supportive participant in an increasingly equitable and just community ecosystem. So that's one thing, is expand the range of people involved in the conversation as you undertake this plan. A second thing to think about is to move beyond thinking about specific programs or specific initiatives and really think about the fabric of your campus as an engaged institution. So that means thinking about questions like this. Do we have on our faculty, on our staff, among our students, in our leadership, the capacity we need to engage effectively? How do we need to get better as members of our campus community at doing the work of engagement, and how can we get ourselves there? Do we have systems and policies in place that support and encourage the work of engagement? And if not, how do we get there? Do we have a campus culture that values engagement and says that the public purposes of higher education are in fact the purposes of higher education, so that when we interpret those policies and put those systems into practice, we do so in ways that reflect the deepest values and commitments that our institutions are engaged in. So that's a second idea, is think about how fundamental change is possible through this planning process and how you can become a different and better institution through this work. And a third thing I would suggest you think about is how to integrate the work of engagement through and across the institution. And here's an example of that. Let's say you have a partnership with a public school system supporting academic learning for K-12 students. That's a really good thing to do. It's important work. Are you thinking also about the parents of those students, about how, for example, your human resources department might be connecting with those parents to create economic opportunity for them today to support the households that you're connected to through education? Are the folks who develop real estate for your campus thinking about those same families and how the campus's development can create an increasingly supportive environment for the community that you're working with through your K-12 partnership?
Okay, sorry guys, I have a few chats and it's not going to let me to continue the video. Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Let me go back. Okay.
Can create an increasingly supportive environment for the community that you're working with through your K-12 partnership. Are your purchasing people thinking about how local purchasing might be giving opportunities to small businesses that are being started by parents of the kids in the schools? Does your business program have opportunities to help folks with ideas for small businesses develop those? Are there ways you can think about all of those things in an integrated fashion that doesn't just create opportunities for one-time connections or short-term links, but that in a deeper way builds a long-term connection between the campus and the community in ways that are supportive of the kinds of goals about democracy and equality and opportunity that motivate this work in the first place?
Okay. All right, we're going to move on, but I saw a couple of chats and just wanted to make sure I was seeing all of those. Great. So yes, we can send a link specifically to that video out to folks, if that would be helpful to you to share with others. So per what Andrew said about integrating and kind of what we're envisioning might be involved in a great civic action plan, just an outline of some things. So really looking at systems, policy, culture change, not necessarily new programs or that kind of thing, but really changes at that level that could create a more engaged campus. Thinking about building capacity, which hopefully you all know is something we're always trying to be very focused on with our members and certainly can support. Really being grounded in the goals that already exist for your institution, your specific context and place. Trying to push beyond where you are now to things that might make greater impact. And then, as Andrew mentioned, really integrating across different parts of the institution. So we will be supporting this in several ways. Some things to start thinking about in terms of your civic action plan. As Andrew mentioned, a diverse team. And this can be a lot of different things. You know, he mentioned a lot of different people that I think it is important to have involved in the process, but I also think being realistic about how much time you can ask of people who aren't involved directly and thinking about how you can involve folks in giving input, but not necessarily asking them to embark on a strategic planning process with you and that involves several meetings and a lot of their time. So thinking about different ways to get input from folks and maybe have a smaller core group that's doing a lot of the planning. thinking about your key strengths, one of the things that's emphasized in the action plan template that I'm going to show you and will be emphasized in the institutes is really an asset-based approach of thinking about the strengths that your campus has and really how you can build upon those. Thinking a lot about outcomes, again, really being focused on assessment and evidence and thinking about the outcomes you want to achieve, thinking practically about how you can get there and really breaking that down into steps. So some of the support options that we're going to offer, and I'll go through each of these, and hopefully this will be the area where you're able to ask questions and think about where you would like to engage with your campus and how we can best support you. So there's a planning framework and knowledge hubs, and these are online resources that I'll show you. There are 3 national institutes being offered this fall. There is an Iowa Institute being offered in January. There's a capacity self-assessment process that we had already embarked on prior to this year, and that can be built into your civic action planning process. And of course, we're always available for one-on-one assistance, supporting your campus in all the ways that we have sought to do in the past and will continue to do in the future. And then in the spring, we'll be talking about disseminating plans to help continue to really talk about the importance of this and share the great work that's happening on all of your campuses. So just to start with the planning framework, this is a document that's available online and that I'll send out with this recording. And it really walks you through steps of creating a plan and gives you a framework that that plan can resemble. Now, again, the point of this process is not to make all of our campuses look the same or do the same thing. So if this framework doesn't make sense to you or doesn't fit with the plans that you have, the idea is not that this framework is something you have to adopt. The idea is that it's a resource available to you if it helps you really to organize your thinking and planning. So it starts with a rationale and just really thinking about where you are now, what exists, the mission, what really drives this work on your campus. Thinking about your baseline, what information do you have currently about what your assets are, your impact is, the benchmarking of where you are now, where other institutions are. I can certainly help with this in terms of data from other institutions. Those of you who have completed the national survey in the past will have some of that information that you might want to look at. This is a good place to engage your institutional research office in thinking about what baseline information might exist through existing assessment practices on your campus and surveys on your campus. And then really thinking about the team that's going to work with you to put this together. And thinking about that from several different angles. And I really like these 3 Ps in terms of how you think about that. So perspective is important, and making sure you're going to have a variety of perspectives. So as Andrew mentioned, thinking about faculty, students, other folks across campus, community, and really making sure you have that diversity of ideas and diversity of lenses for the work that you're doing. Of course, thinking about power, and that can't be missed in a planning process. If you create a plan that doesn't involve any of the folks who would be needed to implement that plan and to really make systems and policy level change, then obviously it's less likely to be successful. So thinking about how you can engage those who have both formal and informal power within your institution. So that's something to think about. You know, there's formal power through titles and high-ranking positions, but within your own campus culture, there's also informal power in terms of folks who have a lot of influence, are respected, that kind of thing. So thinking about that. But the other thing to think about is persistence. And that's kind of what I mentioned before. You know, usually the folks with the most power also have the busiest schedules. They're being pulled in a lot of directions. So while their input is important and critical to the process, involving people who can really persist and work with you through the planning process and through the implementation of the plan and really have that interest is important as well. So thinking about your team from that perspective, thinking about the fact that there doesn't have to be one team. There can be different ways that you engage folks. In a lot of strategic planning processes, you'll have a core team that's really making a lot of the decisions, but a broader team will be giving input throughout the process so that you're grabbing ideas, you're getting reactions early on, you're really testing things throughout the process. So that's something to think about as well as you're thinking about who you want to involve. Again, really focusing on outcomes and tying to existing commitments that your institution has, tying into things that have other accountability frameworks behind them that will be helpful, but also thinking about real transformation. How can you really move things forward on your campus? And then thinking strategically about the actual mechanics and really getting into the nitty-gritty of how things will occur and making sure those conversations are happening. So that's the framework and timeline and accountability. So again, all of these areas are provided in the framework document that's available. I will share that with you after this conversation, and it'll be available on our website. It's available on the National Campus Compact website. But this is the framework that it really lays out that you can use to both guide your process and organize your thoughts if that's helpful to you. And then, of course, thinking about collective action throughout, how you can really accelerate change, looking at the plans of other organizations in the community, other bases on campus, and that kind of thing. So another resource that's available to you throughout and that will be growing over this year is the Knowledge Hubs. So I'm going to take a minute to share this with you just so I can kind of show you what's available in that area. So this is the National Campus Compact website that I'm sharing with you. You can access the Knowledge Hubs right on their homepage along with other civic action planning resources. As you can see, currently there are a number of hubs available around anchor institutions, assessment, working with athletics, working with sustainability, creating dialogue on campus, college access, and that kind of thing. We have an entire list of other hubs that are currently in process. So the idea is that we'll be creating a number of hubs throughout the year that support different aspects of civic action and of civic action planning so that you'll be able to access those. So just to show you institutional assessment, there are a lot of different resources that are organized for you to look at, tools that are available. So this is the assessment one, so you can really look at different areas, including self-assessment, tracking and monitoring, surveys that are available, organizations that are available, examples, other articles, and then other useful information in that specific area. These will be curated on an ongoing basis by folks across the network. The other opportunity that's available to you is that if you are interested in curating a knowledge hub in a specific area where you have expertise, please contact me because that's something that we're always looking for more folks to be able to do. So this is a spot where you can really look for resources in these areas. And then I'm just going to go back to the planning framework that I was talking about. So this is the main page for Civic Action Plan resources. You can find those, and this is the framework we just went through that I'll be sharing with you. And it's available as a PDF document that helps you, again, look at the planning process and walk through the rationale that we talked about, the commitments, as well as the process and elements of a great plan. So it offers more than I'm going to cover today in terms of questions you can think about and ways to really guide your thinking in that area. So go back to our PowerPoint now. Okay. So the other opportunity that is available this year is a couple of different in-person and other opportunities for your campus to engage with us thinking about your action plan. So I'm just going to skip through what we've talked about. Framework, knowledge hubs. So there are 3 national institutes being offered. The first is coming up in September. It is co-hosted with the Education Testing Service because it's really going to focus on assessment as being a focus of the Civic Action Plan. So that one's going to have that additional focus. And that's happening in New Jersey. The second one is happening in mid-October just south of us in St. Louis. That'll again be a 2-day institute. And then the final National Institute is going to be the next week in October in San Diego. So for each of these institutes, you'll have an agenda that includes going through some of what we've talked about today in more depth. And again, these are 2-day institutes. Introduction to the planning process, exploring some key planning concepts. There will be large group discussion as well as time for your team to plan. The idea with teams is that you would propose 3 people, and that does need to include at least one senior academic administrator and one faculty member or administrator directly responsible for civic engagement. The other person can be whatever makes sense to you. It can be a 2-person team if that's what makes sense for you. You can also request a larger than 3-person team, and then that'll be reviewed depending on how many people register. So for each of these institutes, important things to know, they are free to Campus Compact members. There's no registration cost. Of course, each member is covering their own travel and accommodations. Teams are being accepted on a first come, first served basis as we speak. So if attending a National Institute is something your campus might be interested in, I would say acting pretty quickly is important in terms of securing a spot at one of those institutes. And they're really designed to help you kick off the process, start some of your planning, talk in affinity groups across the country with folks also doing this, and really get some good resources and facilitation for starting your civic action planning process. In Iowa, we're going to host a similar but condensed institute that'll be closely aligned with what's being done at the National Institutes, but in Iowa and just for a day. So a little more accessible if attending a 2-day institute nationally is not something you think you can swing on your campus. So we're planning that for January 20th in Des Moines. Again, a day-long institute rather than 2 days. But we will allow teams of up to 5 and would like to see a team makeup similar to what's being called for with the National Institutes. These will also be free to Campus Compact members, and we'll cover food for that event. And it's, again, an opportunity to really kick off your planning process, think about some core principles of planning, think about community engagement and get some ideas there, and have some time to really work with your team and then talk across the state as well about possibilities. I know also that some of the other states in our neighboring region might be offering state institutes, and we'll be talking about how to share those opportunities. So there may be other chances to go to nearby states for institutes if the state doesn't work or they're offering something you're looking for. And there also may be folks from other states who attend our institute. We're trying to create as many opportunities as we can for our member campuses. So the other piece of this is we at Iowa Campus Compact had already, prior to the 30th anniversary action statement, started a process of really trying to help our member campuses think about their capacity and really assess their capacity for community engagement. We have worked with a committee of folks from across the state to create a rubric. This really brings together a lot of the concepts that are in existing rubrics for self-assessment, but in a different way that we felt represented the broader spectrum of what our campuses are looking at. The rubric is largely based on the Carnegie classification for community engagement with some other elements. The idea there being that campuses interested in the Carnegie classification can have the opportunity to prepare for classification or reclassification through the self-assessment process, and that it'll be really closely aligned with helping you look at that. Along with the rubric, what we're offering member campuses is the opportunity to really go through a self-assessment process with a cohort over the course of the year. We'll be offering this in future years, not just this year, but it does align with the civic action planning process and can help you reach your action planning goals as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, our committee came up with really a process involving 5 phases, again, that we'll walk through together as a cohort of leaders. So if your campus is interested in participating in this process this year, you would identify a leader or co-leaders, and those would be the people who would participate in the cohort. So again, we're not looking for every single member of your planning team to participate in a statewide cohort. It's really for those folks who would be leading the effort on your campus. So the first phase will start later this month. We're looking to identify teams by August 15th, or identify campuses who want to participate by August 15th. And then by the end of the month, we would have a conversation as a cohort really about who might be on your team, how to plan for those first meetings, and how to really kick off the process on your campus. We'll move into the early fall thinking about how to prepare your team, and then how to have the members of your team complete their own take on the self-assessment with an individual rubric. Moving into late fall with really coming together as a team and building consensus around what that self-assessment is. So by the end of this fall, you would have completed the self-assessment part of the process. And then in early spring, you'd be moving into the goal setting and action planning. So that coincides with both the goal for sharing civic action plans nationally and with the January Institute. So it would be up to your team on your individual campus if you want to attend the January Institute as a part of the self-assessment process, or if you'd rather meet back on your campus with our support. And then by late spring, we're looking to have the self-assessment and action plans complete so that we can all be a part of the process of disseminating those plans and really celebrating and sharing our work together. So that would be the plan for this year's self-assessment process. We have tested the rubric now on a couple of campuses and used that pilot phase to really create this model of what a process is that would work for campuses. So the idea is that you would be completing this process on your campus, but throughout you would be supported by a cohort of other leaders and co-leaders throughout the state and by our team at Iowa Campus Compact. So you would be receiving support throughout the process in whatever way makes the most sense for your campus, and be able to really work with other folks who are doing the same thing on their campuses. So again, we're looking for campuses who want to participate in the self-assessment process for this year to sign up with me by August 15th so that we can initiate that first phase by the end of August and really get things kicked off for the semester on your campus. So just a couple of additional opportunities. First of all, you can create a civic action plan without taking advantage of any of what I've laid out today. That is totally up to you, obviously. But I'm also available for one-on-one assistance as you're thinking about your plan. We're thinking about different ways that Iowa Campus Compact can support the planning you're thinking about doing. It doesn't have to fit with the model of the institutes or the self-assessment if that doesn't make sense to you. So definitely as you're thinking about this, reach out to us and let us know what you think would be most helpful to you. In terms of dissemination in the spring, I wanted to just mention that since that is a big piece of this, but I don't have a lot of information right now, at least about how National Campus Compact will be seeking to disseminate this information. Again, what the action plan statement called for was for all of the presidents who signed on to have their campus complete a plan within a year. So that would be, again, in the spring of 2017. So the idea is we'll be looking to collect those plans. We'll have an online space where you can upload and share those plans. And then we'll be looking to really highlight what everyone is doing on their campus and the great work they're planning, and also use the plans as we think about how we are going to be offering development and resources in the future to campuses. Those plans will be a good guide for us as well to be able to see where everyone plans to focus their time and energy so that we can really hone in on that and work together to build our collective action and collaboration. So more information will be coming about that. Our annual meeting and awards will be held sometime in May. We're working to secure that date, and highlighting the plans will certainly be a part of that event as well. So that's really what I wanted to cover today, and I want to open it up to any questions that you may have. Can be specific to your campus, overall questions about action planning and the process, and of course we can have one-on-one conversations as well. But I'm going to stop the share, and then you should be able to unmute yourself, but I will, let me know if you can't, and I can do that. You can type into the chat box, or you can unmute and go ahead and ask a question. Any questions right now?
Hey, Emily, can you hear me?
I can.
I'm wondering about the National Institute, and I didn't quite catch what you were saying about the requirement to have an upper administrator there with us. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, they're looking for senior level, and I think that can have different connotations. I don't think that 100% has to be a vice president or provost, but I think that since the national institutes there's not really an application process, it's just first come, first serve, but they are going to be looking to see that you have someone who could be considered senior level to approve your team for the institute.
And to come with us.
Yes.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's the challenge of those, and I certainly understand that. And that's one reason that we're offering the Iowa Institute, to have something that's maybe a little more accessible for folks on your team to be able to come for the day rather than committing 2 days. But I do know they've had a lot of applications from campuses. So if just saying that helps to get your senior level administrator there, it's something where they certainly will have colleagues to connect with from across the country.
I think our new provost would be interested. I just think her calendar's probably booked through October already. So, but that's good to know, because that sort of helps frame how to move forward, that they're that serious about it. So thank you.
Yes, I would say that. That's the one requirement they're really looking at, again, because there's really nothing else to the application. That's the one thing they're going to be making sure they have the teams that they need in approving everyone, and that's really the main determination, other than who gets in first, of who will be approved for the institutes. Yeah, Renee?
Raising my electronic hand. You mentioned the New Jersey one has more of a focus on assessment. Is there a theme for the October's that's different than that, or?
No, the main thing with the New Jersey one is that it's in partnership with ETS. So ETS will be presenting some on a new effort they have underway around assessment, and we'll be talking about that specifically in the context of planning. So that's the main just sort of addition to that one. The others will focus more broadly in all the areas of the plan and not necessarily hone in on that one specific thing. Any other questions for us today? Great, okay. As I said, please feel free to reach out to me to talk individually about what might work best for your campus. I'll be sending out the recording of this, as well as the resources that I mentioned and the video of our national president, if that's helpful. So I'll send that out to everyone who registered, and then we'll also share it on our weekly update so that folks can access it there. We just really look forward to working with everybody to enhance the efforts I know you already have underway on your campus, and figure out how this can really be a process that helps move things forward and helps you do what you need to do, and moves work forward for you. So have a great Friday, everybody, and we will talk soon.